No more bullshit. No more bullshit.
Firefighters, they were in place, and it was almost as if they knew the direction and they were ready to attack it by that strip mall.
Yeah, and the good news is that I'm seeing the strip mall standing, but every time I speak with you, within the last hour, there's a different firefight, and now the fire has somehow made its way along Sunset Boulevard as it continues to try and burn towards Gladstone's and the ocean. And you can see that palm tree. It's like I turn my back, there's another part on fire. I thought that this apartment building to the right of us was okay, but now it looks like it's gone around, and there's a house that I see up on that hillside right below. That fire is getting very close to a home, and it has just been, you know, one of those chaotic scenes. There's so many chaotic things about covering a fire and the evacuation, but something I'm noticing right now at Sunset and Palisades Drive that is really haunting to me is the amount of cars that people have left in places that you wouldn't normally see cars. Take a look at some of the vehicles in between these fire trucks. There are clearly people that did not like sitting in this traffic. The fire was getting close and they ditched their cars, and we are seeing a lot of vehicles everywhere, which of course, as a fire truck goes by us right now, which of course makes the firefight hard because fire trucks are trying to get in and out. You see they have hose lines now up and down Sunset Boulevard, and that fire is really, really raging right now. We are also, I want to show, we are near a pretty well-known location here on the edge of Pacific Palisades and Malibu. It is the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple. That's behind this fence that we're showing you right now. I have not seen any flames in that area, but I can tell you there is a lake down there. Seems like they're having no trouble getting water on this fire, but there is a lake down there. That's on the other side. But you can just see that firefighters are using Sunset Boulevard as this fire break. And when I think that maybe they have a handle on what was happening on the bottom of Palisades Drive, I turn and see this pretty scary situation in a home up there on that hill on Sunset Boulevard, just south of Palisades Drive.
This is the fault of the Democrat government in California, who has been warned over and over again. They ran out of water because they weren't refilling reservoirs. They cut funding for firefighters. These problems have been known about forever. 10 years ago, I was in California covering the drought. We talked about it all the time. When you're traveling over the hills, the mountains, going from, say, like the valley into LA, there's dry brush everywhere. And, you know, I had people tell me, like, it could be a guy driving his truck and a chain falls out and sparks the ground. Could be someone flicking a cigarette. They knew this was a possibility. They didn't care. They did not. To make things worse, we've got reports now that insurance companies inexplicably dropped tons of these homes from their policies only a few weeks before. I believe James Woods was one of these individuals who says they don't have insurance because at some point a couple months ago, abruptly, they just said, we are no longer going to cover you. Now, some people may believe this means conspiracy, that they knew it was going to happen. Well, I'll tell you this. They did know it was going to happen. They didn't know specifically the date. They did not know that today we'd be experiencing this mass carnage. They knew that the brush was mismanaged. They knew that Gavin Newsom was doing a poor job. They knew that the LA mayor was pulling funding, not filling the reservoirs. And they knew when the winds kicked up, they would not be able to stop it.
Jacob, describe the situation there now. The sun obviously up. How is that affecting things?
Lester, it feels, and I'm trying not to exaggerate here, catastrophic, disastrous. Something I think the likes of which people like myself, who's a lifelong resident not only of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, but also of this neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, where I was born and raised, has never seen before. There are 23,000 people that live in this beautiful coastal community between the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. And those tens of thousands of people have been ordered to evacuate because of exactly what you're seeing. This used to be a house, and everywhere you look, there are scenes just like this. Up and down Sunset Boulevard, the famed Sunset Boulevard from where I'm standing right now, all the way into the Palisades Village. Every marker of this once vibrant community is gone. The grocery stores are gone, both of them. The gas stations are gone. Doctors' offices are gone. The public library, where I grew up going as a child and have brought my own children, gone. What's different about this? How could this have happened? These are the questions that I continue to hear asked. And the answer is what you heard in that press conference. The reason that the air quality is so awful right now, as they were discussing, is that these are hurricane force winds that we have seen gusting in the Los Angeles area. And it was a tinderbox ready to go. We have had virtually no rain over the course of the last several months after 2 years of pretty intense rain, unusual for Southern California, where we're so used to droughts. And everything went up in an instant. It started in the Palisades Highlands, where you might have seen those pictures of what seemed like hundreds of cars abandoned on the side of the road, people literally running for their lives, bulldozers clearing the streets so first responders could come in. And to echo what you heard from the folks looking out for the life and safety of the people in Los Angeles at that press conference, there's a mutual aid situation going on right now in Los Angeles, meaning it's the Los Angeles City Fire Department, the Los Angeles County Fire Department, neighboring jurisdictions like Malibu, Santa Monica have come to help here. The Los Angeles Police Department is on a modified citywide tactical alert, which means some of the nearly 9,000 or 10,000 police officers that are all called into duty today throughout the city of Los Angeles are being dispatched here to not only order evacuations from people who may not have left, and if there are anybody who is still in a home right now, it is well past time to get out, but also to control traffic, to keep people out, to let the first responders do their job. Lester, I think a lot of times we think about what the big one might look like as far as an earthquake in Southern California. Well, this is the big one when it comes to a fire here, Lester.
Joining us now is California Fire Battalion Chief Brent Pasqua. And Mr. Pasqua, thank you so much for joining us in what we know is a very stressful and chaotic time for you. And from what we know and what we see, this is a fast expanding and fast moving fire. Can you tell us what you're seeing right now and what can you tell us about the Hearst-Sylmar fire?
Yeah, so right now we're all under the same conditions, the Santa Ana red flag conditions with those 70-mile-an-hour winds. Right now they've calmed down a little bit, but they're still 30 to 40 mile an hour. So that makes this firefight extremely difficult.
And how does Santa Ana winds complicate containment of the fire?
Yeah, so the winds are so erratic, they're spreading fire faster than our crews can get in front of it. So our most important priority is life safety. We're trying to get everyone out of the way. That way we do not have anyone hurt or killed.
LA is facing its worst wildfire in its history, and Mayor Karen Bass is facing some criticism tonight from a lot of different fronts. Earlier this year, she approved a budget-cutting $17.5 million from the fire department while increasing police funding by $12.6 million. Fire department now gets 6% of the city's budget compared to 15% for police. Critics, including former mayoral candidate Rick Caruso, questioning her leadership, especially since she was in Ghana for a presidential event, inauguration in Ghana, when the fires broke out. Mayor Bass did do a press conference tonight. We invited her to come on and do an interview. She hasn't accepted that. She did do a press conference to share her side of the story. And she talked about some of the water tanks from Pacific Palisades, which were not filled up in the moment when a lot of people needed them. Take a listen.
This is going to be an effort of all of us coming together, and we have to resist any effort to pull us apart. In terms of my flight home, I was on a military flight, as I mentioned, which allowed me to be in constant communication. I was on the phone, on the plane, almost every hour of the flight. So although I was not physically here, I was in contact with many of the individuals that are standing here throughout the entire time. When my flight landed, immediately went to the fire zone and saw what happened in Pacific Palisades. Thank you.
First of all, are you in a safe place that you can report to us? I am, Ashley. I mean, look, you're right. When it gets dark, the situation changes out here, and you, I mean, there's no power. Obviously, there's absolutely no cell service. Thank goodness we have a Starlink. It's the only way we can barely get on TV. But I want to step out of the way. I mean, this is what you see when you drive around the Palisades. Most of the houses here are gone. They've burned totally down, and then the ones that are still standing are catching fire. And what happens is, like this one, we've watched it burn down. We've been right in this spot for the last 45 minutes, and there was a whole second floor that is now gone. And the embers will fly from this house, and then they'll go to the neighbor's house, and sadly, then the neighbor's house will catch on fire. It's what we've been watching happen all night long. And firefighters, there's just not enough of them, Ashley. I mean, you barely see them. A few of them have driven by, but they don't have water, because the water is an issue in some of these parts of the Palisades. The hydrants aren't working. And then some of the houses they just let go. What they'll do is, if there's a house that looks okay and the roof catches on fire because one of these embers flies over, they'll rush over and put that fire out, trying to save one of the houses before it's too late. But they're working so hard. I mean, I wish you could see some of their faces when they jump out, and there's just not enough of them. It's like, it's never ending. And to just watch houses burn down. This is now, I don't know, the 10th that we've watched burn down in the last couple of hours. It's just such a strange thing, because you're used to, like, oh my gosh, the house is on fire. The firefighters are going to be here soon. And that's not happening out here. There are, I mean, it's just, look this way. I want to show you real quick, Ashley. Chris, first of all, the house next door is gone and still sort of on fire. And then right on the block down there's another house that's now on fire. And it just goes on and on and on. And you said 1,000 structures damaged. I don't know. I honestly can't keep track.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
understand.
gonna put the goggles back on. I hate wearing these goggles. I hate it. They're so uncomfortable.
Yeah, but do it, because
when the wind
that's pretty painful
wind shifts
stuff when the wind
directions.
shifts.
Yeah, it just shifted. So anyway, it's just, I've covered a lot of hurricanes. I've never covered a fire like this. I mean, I'm from Florida, and it's really, really unbelievable, and it really is apocalyptic. And it's to just go street after street after street where every single house is burned down or is on fire and no one is helping is really like a crazy thing to see.
Here's video from 2018, Donald Trump warning Gavin Newsom what could happen in California.
There's been a lot of study going on over the last little while, and I will say I think you're going to have, hopefully this is going to be the last of these, because this was a really, really bad one. And I know Gavin's committed, we're all committed, I'm committed to make sure that we get all of this cleaned out and protected. We've got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests, very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem. So I know everybody's looking at that, to that end, and it's going to work out.
Listen to him.
Oh, and look at this.
Let's see what this is.
This whole neighborhood.
Yeah, this is what we were. Yeah, we knew this was here, and this is like the first chance that we're actually kind of getting a look at that real devastation. When they keep saying over 1,000 homes burned in the Palisades, this is one of those areas. This neighborhood, I would venture to say, probably 500, maybe more homes out there. As I just get wider and wider, you can see some of the homes still standing, but so many of them just flattened out here. We can bring the map back up here in just a moment, but this is off of Sunset near Alma Real Drive. That's going to be the general area, and that's also part of the downtown area there as well. But take a look at that. This is, when you talk about a brush fire and you say, oh, there's some homes that have been destroyed, I never picture anything like this. This is just blocks after blocks after blocks of that neighborhood out here, and you can just see it just goes and goes goes and goes. And then sometimes there is, oddly enough, there's like a structure standing or maybe a garage standing. But for the most part, I would say every home in this neighborhood flattened due to the Palisades fire. And I would venture to say also, during one of the press conferences, I did hear them talking. One of the people talking about an entire neighborhood burning, and there was no resources there. This might have been what they were talking about, because it just goes and goes and goes. But also in that same breath could you imagine being a firefighter, even with all the resources that you could possibly have at your fingertips? How do you battle an entire neighborhood burning? This has got to be 500 homes, maybe more. This is something that I personally have never seen, and again, I would venture to say a lot of other folks watching have never seen, especially here in the Southern California area.
And as firefighters tried to contain these blazes this week, they just sort of ran out of water in a lot of areas. Fire hydrants ran dry, and people didn't even have water in their homes. I heard about one guy that was trying to protect his house from catching on fire with dirt and a shovel because he couldn't even use his hose. And this seems to have been a double failure of the fire department and the water department. And critics have pointed out that Mayor Karen Bass cut funding to the fire department by almost $18 million this year. And also, the Department of Water and Power has dealt with a lot of recent mismanagement and scandals. Its last commissioner was fired after less than a year on the job, and 2 of its last 3 general managers resigned in disgrace. One quit after wasting $40 million in funding on useless, nothing projects. And another one was actually sentenced to 6 years in jail for taking bribes. And even with the reduced funding and all of that, this really shouldn't have happened. One former commissioner of the LA Department of Water and Power told the LA Times that there could have and should have been fail-safes and backup systems in place that should have kept the water flowing and given the firefighters the tools they needed to fight the blazes. And I should also point out that this didn't just happen in the city. Fire hydrants were running dry throughout LA County, and this has also happened previously in other places around LA, in other cities and counties, where firefighters have just sort of run out of water while trying to fight wildfires. And local officials took a lot of heat for it back then, but for whatever reason, Los Angeles City and County just didn't seem to learn from those mistakes.
Flashback. They said, "We have no water." I said, "Do you have a drought?" "No, we don't have a drought." I said, "Why don't you have no water?" "Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. You know, your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen
Yeah.
that are like.
End of flashback. All right, so there's Trump 2 months ago talking about what needed to be done. And now I want to...
I'm betting the average person thinks to themselves, well, maybe they can't afford it. We are $80 billion over budget on a rail from Bakersfield to Merced. I challenge any of you to find those 2 cities on the map and explain to me, A, first of all, if you can find them, B, why we need a fast rail between those 2. $80 billion over budget, and not one rail has been laid down.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
The Palisades fire has grown to more than 21,000 acres. It is only 8% contained as firefighters continue to battle dry conditions.
With more than 5,000 homes and structures lost, it is the 4th most destructive wildfire in California history. Meanwhile, we're following reports of looting in the area. We're also learning why a nearby reservoir, a crucial resource, could not be used in the firefight. So let's go live to Eyewitness News reporter Josh Haskell, live in Pacific Palisades. Josh?
Yeah, David and Colleen, it has been a desperate scene here all day. We are at the final checkpoint to get into Pacific Palisades. Take a look. Residents are trying to get in, but you need a police escort. They are being turned away. Most are. But first, I do want to play a video that I received earlier from a friend that was recorded on his home Ring camera. His family is evacuated, but it was a surprise recording from a firefighter who's in place in his driveway for structure protection.
Hello, I don't know if you can see this, but we're the City of Orange Fire Department. We're assigned for protection, what we call full patrol of your neighborhood. So we'll be roaming around probably the whole next 24 hours, make sure nothing flares up, so we can protect your property.
Now take a look at this line of cars on Sunset Boulevard at one of the 3 checkpoints. Now, residents have been lining up to see if they still have a home and retrieve their belongings. The Palisades fire is the 4th most destructive fire in California history. The devastation catastrophic, as it really feels that over 50% of the town of Pacific Palisades is gone. The fire is currently at 8% containment. Now, it's burned over 21,000 acres. 5,316 structures have been destroyed, and over 3,000 firefighters are assigned. Air support has helped a great deal, but as we've been reporting, one of the 2 LA County super scoopers assigned to the Palisades fire was hit by a drone and has been taken out of service until Monday. The current red flag warning ends tonight, and another one will start Monday. Here's what Mayor Bass said today, and also we interviewed a resident of Pacific Palisades whose home was looted.
I want the residents of Los Angeles region to have faith in what we are doing 24 hours a day. I can say on behalf of our first responders from the fire department, the police department, we are doing everything we can to bring the situation under control, and success has been reported.
We saw about 3 guys go in. They were wearing what you'd see like people wear during COVID, just like a hoodie and the normal mask. And essentially they just went in and they took a lot of things. They didn't take any photos, like sentimental things. Those are still there, but we did have a good amount of cash in there. We had watches, most importantly clothes, a lot of nice clothes, designer things.
Now, Aiden and his family are under a mandatory evacuation, and although firefighters saved their home, they now have to deal with looting. Now, they told me they feel betrayed by the city. Also, the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which holds 117 million gallons of water, is currently closed because of repairs to its cover, and it could not be used during the Palisades fire. Although it is located in the middle of the Palisades in the Palisades Highlands, and some believe it would have really helped. Governor Newsom has ordered a probe as to why that reservoir was offline.
With us now, owner and executive chairman of the Los Angeles Times, Dr. Soon Shiong, Dr. Patrick Soon Shiong, whose paper just today released an explosive investigative report on how ill-prepared Los Angeles was for these devastating wildfires. They report, quoting now, Pacific Palisades Reservoir was offline and empty when the firestorm exploded. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you. Never is local news reporting and important reporting needed more in times like this. When your team of reporters brought you this, that the reservoir was offline and empty, what was your response?
That it's so crazy that we have leaders that are reactive rather than proactive. I mean, it really emphasizes what I tweeted yesterday about issues of competence. And I think that's where we're really concerned. We don't elect people with great operational competence.
It's never when one thing goes wrong, it's when multiple things goes wrong. We argued last night that what we are seeing is not a failure, but is a success of policies, that the policies that were put in place have led to these events. Is that pretty much how you see it as well?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, right, there's really no surprise that we would have fires. In fact, we lived through a fire just a couple of years ago. So the idea that, for example, we don't create fire breaks, we actually reduce the budget. We actually don't inspect the hydrants. Apparently there's we'll be doing this investigation of a valve that actually could have actually increased the pressure, the absence of water in the reservoirs. Now you hear all these excuses, and I just heard this excuse about disinformation. I mean, I think that's outrageous when you have thousands of acres burning and 10 people are dead, so at least. So yes, I think the policies were misplaced. We have to ask our questions, where are we spending the money and why? And what is the sort of planning and the logistics skill sets of actually preparing ahead for this?
What you're seeing here is the destruction of James Barrow's Pacific Palisades home, moment by moment. This is all captured by the camera in his Tesla. Now, James Barrow, we connected on social media. I invited him to come on to the show tonight to talk about this because you have quite the story. Let's just start with, obviously, we're so sorry that this has happened to you, and basically all of your friends in Pacific Palisades have lost their home as well. You told me that earlier preparing for tonight's interview. Talk to us about your own experience. What was that like, seeing your home burn, and you must have felt so helpless?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on here. And yeah, I mean, it was surreal. It was the entire day was just a really hard to explain day. It started, at 10:30, my wife had called me in, seen smoke, and she went ahead and called the schools, got our kids out of school. I was at a conference in Las Vegas. I was at CES for work. And, we had no communication at all from the government, like no idea. And honestly, it appeared as if this was not even remotely a possibility this would happen to us. And then throughout the day, it just got more serious and serious. And it was all through friends on text and WhatsApp. No communication was given to us. And then finally, I left the conference. I went to the airport to try to get a flight home. And a friend texted me and said on TV, this looks really bad. And he said, check your Tesla. So I pulled up the cameras. And literally at that moment, the fire had jumped from the neighbor's house to the side yard to the garage to the rest of the house. I watched it burn down. And within an hour, it was down to the ground. And the entire time, there was no fire trucks. There's nothing that came. And when we live 3 blocks from the fire station.
Let's show the viewers that, because we have a picture of your home, what it was before. So if our director can pull that up. So here's what it was. You live there with your wife, and you have a 3-year-old, you have a 5-year-old. Thank goodness you all are safe and okay tonight. But then you provided a map that shows, and it's 3 blocks away is what you count between your house and the nearest fire station in the Pacific Palisades. And you say you didn't have any firefighters show up. And I know this is you're very much pro firefighters. This is not a knock on them necessarily, but you certainly felt abandoned.
Yeah, and the irony of all this, I still can actually access my camera from my car. I have not been to the house yet, but I can still look at it remotely. And there was no emergency response there for 24 hours. So it was just a total failure, kind of in every kind of step of the way that I can at least see. And unfortunately, I had to see it with my own eyes. And the part that just upsets me the most, to be totally candid about it, is, and I think I mentioned this to you, but my insurance got dropped by State Farm. I got put on the FAIR plan. That alone is frustrating. But the city knew that State Farm had dropped all of us. So there were like 1,600 of us who lost our insurance over the last 6 months. And the city apparently didn't take that as us being in a form of elevated risk. And so the fact that the fire hydrants didn't have water pressure or the reservoir filled, whatever it might be, I went ahead and paid a 400% increase on my insurance to protect my family. The city did nothing to protect us. And that's where it's just unbelievable. And yeah.
It's hard to even, comprehend and process all of this. What's next for you and your family?
We rented a house. We were fortunate. I mean, the bright side, because I watched it burn, I was able to I knew my house was gone before a lot of people. So we were able to plan a little earlier. We've had an amazing support system. And so we'll be okay. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's safe. But, as I mentioned earlier, every single friend I have, 30 friends have lost their homes. My 5-year-old's school is burned down. My 3-year-old's preschool is burned down. The place they went to gymnastics is burned down. The place they had art classes, the place they did music class, the library, like every single thing is gone. And I don't know if people really can understand that from these pictures, but it is a failure of just epic proportions, and it just can never happen again.
Reservoirs are completely full, the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
Liar, lie, your pants on fire.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation to understand what was happening with that local reservoir.
You are so busted.
We see President-elect Trump and First Lady Melania Trump at the National Cathedral right now. We have seen, I think this is the first president that we've seen come into the room. We are still waiting, of course, for Bush and Clinton and Obama, as well. There is Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Al Gore, the former vice president, Pence and Trump. It's the first time they've seen each other since January 2021. A lot of tension between the two then, and it didn't look particularly warm just now, one might observe. In any case, this is the first president of many that we're expecting. Of course, we expect President Biden to deliver eulogy. President Biden, back when he was a senator, he and Jimmy Carter shared a political advisor, Pat Caddell. And Pat Caddell, there's former President Obama walking in. First Lady Michelle Obama is not going to be with him today, but here he is joining the club, saying hello to Mike Pence, saying hello to Mike Pence's wife Karen, saying hello to Al Gore. We did not see a greeting of or by President Trump. There he is saying hi to Marilyn Quayle. Did shake hands?
He did shake.
He shook. Okay, I couldn't see it from the angle I was at. Obama and Trump sitting next to each other, talking to each other there. But President Obama did say hello to Marilyn Quayle and former Vice President Dan Quayle.
Wow, that's such an image.
That is an image.
It's
I mean,
good,
you don't
good
see
image.
it's always striking whenever you see any of these people who were political opponents. Although Obama and Trump never ran against each other. Here's George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Bush. Interesting how Barack Obama stood up to let them through. Again, saying hello to the former vice presidents, Al Gore, Mike Pence, and George W. Bush.
I may have missed it, Jake, but I do not think former President Bush or Laura Bush shook hands with.
They walked right past it.
I would the Trumps.
I would
right
find that
Yeah.
very surprising if they didn't. Maybe we didn't see that.
We might not have seen it. The angle keeps shifting back and forth.
Right. I'd still have it.
But you see Barack Obama and Donald Trump having what seems like friendly chit-chat. There's former President Bill Clinton with First Lady and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton walking around. On the other side, it's, of course, the closest to the seats, but also avoids the potential awkwardness of a moment between the Trumps and the Clintons that might not be as warm as the ones she's having with the former vice president. So let's go to Caitlin Collins, who's outside the cathedral.
I mean, Jake, to be able to hear those conversations that are happening, these are just moments that you don't see hardly ever. And just to go back to that moment where Trump walked into the room and shook hands with Mike Pence, that is the first interaction that those two have had. They have not even been in the same room in 4 years. I called to just double check that this morning with a few aides of both of theirs. And it just was a moment to see them come and shake hands with one another. And Jeff, obviously to see this moment, Jeff, you covered President Obama, to see the two of them speaking to one another, seated next to one another, which I don't think they have been at one of these funerals or gatherings where they've been in the same room before.
They have not. It truly is extraordinary. The last time most of them were in the same room was in 2018 at the funeral of George H.W. Bush. President Trump was in office then. One person missing from this is Michelle Obama. I'm told by her advisors that she had a scheduling conflict. She's actually still in Hawaii from an extended holiday vacation. So she's missing there. But if you look from these presidencies, they are linked one to another to another. That's how it works. Of course, and Hillary Clinton seeing her there. Jimmy Carter, as you'll remember, Casey, we covered the Bernie Sanders campaign. Jimmy Carter supported him over her. So there are so many rifts between and rivalries between these former presidents. But today, for at least, you can see them. There is comedy and somewhat of a camaraderie.
Well, they're united in a unique way now that they have all won the right to be a part of the fraternity. But as you point out, they are, before arriving to the Oval Office, fierce rivals with those. And in the case of the way our politics has played out in recent decades, you have seen members of the same families running for president. Two Bushes serving as president of the United States. Obviously, one Clinton serving, the other running. And this extended conversation between Donald Trump and Barack Obama, just so fascinating, especially when you think about how some of the things that Donald Trump said and did while Obama was president, while your point is taken, they didn't run against each other. It was so incredibly personal.
Yeah, he claimed he wasn't an American citizen.
And of course, as
when here comes
noted
in
before,
the room, Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff also entering the room. Harris is right behind President Biden in her motorcade, so obviously we should expect to see him soon as well. And as we know, we're thinking as Gerald Ford's son is going to be reading his words, his eulogy for President Carter here. I was thinking this morning, about how Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter both in a way had President Nixon to thank for coming into office, and to look at this rare club here known as the President's Club. So many of the trajectories of their presidencies is what led their successor to then get into office with Biden and Trump. And to see this moment as Trump and Obama are continuing that conversation. And with second gentleman Doug Emhoff there, Vice President Harris there, Jake, the only person we are waiting on is President Biden himself.
That's right. And it is tempting to try to read into what is going on in terms of who stood up for whom and who said hello to whom and who walked over to whom and who did not. We should also remember that this is a funeral. And people are, generally speaking, trying to behave in a somber and appropriate tone. For evidence of that, just look at the normally backslapping, garrulous Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, both of whom are fairly restrained. It is a funeral of a member of their club, the President's Club. That said, it can't be easy for people in that group who have heard nasty things said about them by one or another of the people present. Whether somebody saying that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, or some of the more vicious things said about Barack Obama and where he was born, and on and on. But it is a funeral, and it is a moment where people try to put aside such grievances for the larger purpose, Anita.
I think you make a good point there, Jake, but it conjured up a memory that I have from Bush 41's funeral, when all the former presidents, for whom first families, everybody was seated. George W. Bush was one of the last people to come in the room before the sitting president, of course, and he went and shook every single person's hand of his former club and former first ladies. And again, it does, yes, this is a reverent moment, of course, but it does take a person of character to sort of change that tone.
I just want to, it's not happening right now, but I just want to emphasize that until 30 seconds ago, Donald Trump was talking to Barack Obama's ear off.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Sunny Hostin, her husband accused of committing federal insurance fraud in a lawsuit. Okay. Now let's read this. Rob, is this a video?
Well, I have this. I'll show you this about.
Okay, let me just read this and I'll come to you. So, Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases. Wow. Hostin's attorney, Daniel Twites, denies the allegations, calling the lawsuit a meritless attempt by a near-bankrupt insurance carrier to intimidate doctors and restrict healthcare benefits. The case involves claims that Hostin performs unnecessary surgeries on patients after minor accidents without exploring less invasive treatments, with American Transit citing New York's 1974 no-fault law as contributing to widespread insurance fraud. Vinny, what do you know about this story?
So, oh man, it's just The View. Just a person, the Sunny Hostin that we all love from one of my favorite shows on The View. And it's always, Tom, what'd you always say? It's always the people that always do the pointing, and it always comes back to them, all right? So when you said, this is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York, you guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia case. Like the mafia one was number one. This one takes it over. So he was scamming insurance companies from taxi drivers, Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers. He was performing unnecessary surgeries and then providing fraudulent medical services in exchange for the kickbacks. Here's a clip I want you guys to see of Sunny Hostin on The View, Tom, basically implicating her husband in this type of a scheme. Play the clip, Rob.
Wait, hold on. Let Sunny get in here. I mean, I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do. Dumbass. So there are a lot of problems with it. But the notion that we are in a violent country, this country was built on violence. We're a very violent country.
Rob, you can stop. Yeah, you can stop it. By the way, she's talking about the whole Luigi Mangione and all that situation. And mind you, she is not implicated in the lawsuit at all. But it's just, I mean, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. Let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures. And look at her track record. How many times has she had to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology?
Flashback. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought. Pete Hegseth has denied any wrongdoing. His lawyer said he paid the woman in 2023 to head off the threat of a baseless lawsuit. No charges were ever brought. End of flashback.
You guys think you're above the law. You ain't above the line.
You handsome, charming, specially marked boxes of Monster cereals know. Inside one of these free wax lips, fangs, or mustaches, they just uncover the real you.
We now continue with Mark Zuckerberg from Meta was on the Joe Rogan Experience. He was talking about the kind of pressure that that Facebook got from the Biden administration to censor during COVID. Watch.
During the Biden administration, when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program, while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who was basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
But he did.
Right.
And he's a weasel. Oh, snap! Just like everybody covering their you-know-whats in the fire situation, this guy was weak. And you know what's interesting when I was reading all the stuff about it? Do you remember when people were talking about him being presidential timber, like he could run for president? Remember this? Oh yeah, there was a lot of talk about that. Like, this guy, he's so brilliant. He's weak. And it's only now that all the tide has turned that he feels safe to say what he cooperated with the government to do.
Please, continue.
Flashback.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook's parent company, now says he regrets agreeing to requests from the Biden administration to censor content related to COVID-19. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg wrote this, quote, "In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it." Zuckerberg went on to say Facebook should not have temporarily demoted an article from the New York Post reporting on allegations of corruption in the Biden family in the lead up to the 2020 election. The panel's back. We're also joined by CNN media analyst Sarah Fisher. Sarah, good morning. Wonderful to have you. Thanks for jumping in on this story. I think what Zuckerberg has done here is fascinating. It's not something we've heard from him in this kind of direct way before. What is going on here, and what does it mean for future elections or issues like this?
This is a huge deal. You'll recall Republicans from 2 states sued. They went all through a huge court battle, basically alleging that the government overreached. They lost that court case, but we never heard from Facebook. We never heard from Meta. So we didn't know how they felt about the issue. This is the first time now. And them coming out and saying, look, this was a big deal. We don't agree with these policies. It sets a precedent moving forward that if any government official, if the White House were to pressure them again, we now know where they stand, and hopefully they now feel empowered to push back.
What are the politics behind this? I mean, clearly Zuckerberg is being influenced by a wide variety of factors. Sending this letter to Jim Jordan, did he feel like he had to do it? Why now? Because ahead of the election, they're going to face a lot of content moderation issues. Even though they don't want to be involved in politics and news anymore, inevitably they are. And so if there is going to be an 11th hour issue like the New York Post story, and Facebook were to make the wrong call, they want everyone in Congress, particularly Republicans, to know that their intent here is not to be picking one side, that they're doing what they think is best for the health of the platform. But if he didn't speak up about the White House pressure now, no one would have believed them then.
End of flashback.
What a bunch of dumbasses. Yeah, really.
Down to the taxi cab to get Elwood's things. This awful man.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
A crew on board a private jet spotted something high in the sky, and they shot this video of it, and they have no idea what they saw that night. Ari Odzer is joining us now from Fort Lauderdale with a first-hand account of this very bizarre sighting, Ari.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And there was definitely something in the sky that night. It was way too high to be a drone, moving way too fast and erratically to be a weather balloon. And the flight attendant who shot the video says several other aircraft reported seeing the same thing.
The aerospace world is full of flying machines that we all recognize. But sometimes people see things in the sky that defy explanation.
It started as white, and then it just got green and almost like an electric, some type of energy around it.
Cassandra Martin is a flight attendant for Surjet, a private air service. On the night of December 23rd, she says she and 2 pilots were flying back to Fort Lauderdale in an empty jet, high over the Bahamas when air traffic control sent a message.
When all of a sudden I heard traffic control say, "We have a foreign object, can you please identify?" I looked to the left and pilot saw 3 objects, I only saw 1, and I grabbed my phone and I just pressed it to the window to see if I can get a video of what the object was. I don't know what it was, and then I zoomed in as much as the phone allowed me to, and the object was white, and then it turned slightly green, almost kind of like an electric field around it of some sort. And it stayed with us for about 45 minutes, and then we didn't see it again. And we were about 45,000 feet, and it was way above us.
What was the chatter like in the cockpit between you, the co-pilot, and the pilot as to what you were seeing?
I think we were astonished, and it was something that you really can't explain, but I don't have the qualifications to know what that is.
Having seen her video, what do you make of it?
Well, I think the video is compelling.
Brian Bender is a defense expert who works with a group founded by military pilots called Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Any idea what that could be?
So, this video and this testimony rhymes a lot with a number of cases that we heard from military pilots going back even 10 or 15 years. And that is these orbs, or in some cases they called them tic tacs. They were more sort of oblong in shape, but flying at very high altitudes, but then also being able to maneuver in ways that don't seem to make a lot of sense to us, at least as we know physics.
Was it a little bit eerie? Yes, because again, we were pretty high up, and whatever we saw was even higher than us, and it had the capability just to zigzag and change color. So that was a little, daunting to say the least. But it was also something fascinating that I was able to see and capture with my phone.
And she'll never forget that. Brian Bender, by the way, says the Pentagon has an office which investigates these sightings. And he says it's imperative for national security and for aviation safety that they figure out what these things are.
Flashback.
Now, day one. Day one of Ronald Reagan's presidency, and day one of freedom for 52 Americans. Though thousands of miles apart, these two historic events moved almost on parallel tracks today. The new president had not been in office an hour when the former hostages became free men and women again. And they are well along now on their trip to West Germany and eventually to home. For the latest on their return to freedom, here is Peter Jennings in West Germany. Peter?
Frank, the Algerian 727 carrying the freed hostages left Athens about 1 hour ago. It's now over the Mediterranean. It was on the ground 90 minutes for refueling. No one disembarked. The American ambassador to Greece, Bob McCloskey, did not go on board, but he did send some flowers on board, and he got a note back from his old friend Bruce Langan, who said, "I am very glad to be finally going home." It is about a 3-hour flight from Athens to Algiers, where the former captives should arrive about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've seen only 2 pictures from Tehran itself today. Iranian television did not transmit any of its coverage outside the country. We have seen 2 still photos. In one, Joseph Subik Jr., the second from the left, is being escorted by 3 Iranians. Subik, whose parents live in Redford, Michigan, had once been specifically accused by his captors of being a spy. In the second picture, Donald Cook, he's the one with glasses and a beard and somewhat more familiar to us, is also being escorted. For Cook, at 25, Tehran was his first overseas post with the State Department. Well, the Iranians who watch television have seen more than we have. It's been on local television there, and in Tehran, the Australian reporter Ray Sinclair offers his impression of what he saw.
I think a lot of people at the other end are going to be quite shocked by what they see of the Americans who will get off that plane. Just looking at them, they appear to have momentarily at least lost complete touch with reality. I'm quite sure they cannot conceive that they are free now. Their faces are blank, their eyes are glazed. It's a stunning emotional experience.
One of the last people to see the Americans in person just before the plane left was the Swiss ambassador Eric Lang. 2 hostages, he said, had difficulty walking, but the others looked fit. They have aged, said the ambassador, and he referred specifically to the chargé d'affaires, Bruce Langan, an old friend of his as well. It was childlike, the ambassador said. They, the hostages, couldn't quite believe they were leaving, but they were falling all over each other with emotion. There was laughing, and there were tears. Many, perhaps most, had not seen each other for those 14 months. It was, said Ambassador Lang, a moment that will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Well, before this day of happiness could dawn, there were more anxious hours during the long night. In this country, the command post, as often in a time of crisis, the Oval Office of the White House. We have a report from Barry Dunsmore.
It wasn't the first time that top Carter administration officials had spent sleepless nights in the Oval Office over Iran. But no matter what, it would be their last. This one had a different ending.
Mr. President, Secretary Miller.
All right, here we go.
Hello? Yeah, right on, man. That's great. That's great. Okay, now the next step then. So that'll go to Algiers, and Algiers, when they notify Iran, will notify us back, right?
Later this morning, after word was received that Iran had taken all the necessary steps to make the transfer of its assets possible, Mr. Carter could relax even more, although there was always the nagging doubt. It wasn't until the motorcade on their way to the capital that the president was able to tell the president-elect that the hostages were aboard planes and would be airborne in 15 or 20 minutes. But it would be longer. Finally, just before Mr. Carter got to Andrews Air Force Base for his trip home to planes, the hostages' departure was officially confirmed. They had taken off about a half an hour after he was no longer president.
The State Department is nearly empty this evening. The Carter folks have left. The Reagan people haven't yet arrived. Many of the professionals don't know what they're going to be doing. Such circumstances don't really lend themselves to celebrations. However, there is an overwhelming sense of relief here that the new administration can begin without the curse of the Iran crisis.
End of flashback.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. There should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that.
And that's the game!
You've disconnected from the hive mind. Explain.